Most of us like to think that we're generous, loyal, even selfless. But what if these qualities were disguises for something else, like pride, insecurity, or ego? Long before the minds of Nietzsche, Freud, and Jung came La Rochefoucauld. Over 350 years ago, French nobleman Francois de La Rochefoucauld argued that almost everything that we do is driven by selfishness, even though we'd like to think it's virtue. And the uncomfortable part is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. What's up, everybody? Travis here, and I'm back with my newest book review. Today we're going to be discussing Francois de La Rochefoucauld's Maxims. Starting with the author, Francois de La Rochefoucauld was a 17th century French aristocrat, soldier, and political insider who lived between the years of 1614 and 1680 during one of the most dramatic periods in French history. He was a duke, deeply embedded in court life, power struggles, and the brutal politics of the monarchies of King Louis XIII and King Louis XIV. La Rochefoucauld fought in civil wars, navigated shifting alliances, and was wounded in battle, imprisoned, exiled, and repeatedly betrayed by the people that he trusted. After years of ambition and disappointment, he slowly disengaged from political life and started to reflect on the observations he made about human nature. Out of these reflections came this book, Maxims, which is a collection of short, concise, sharp-edged conclusions about human nature. Most philosophers, they like to talk about how people ought to behave. La Rochefoucauld, he talked about how people actually behaved. Through his work, he became famous, controversial, and sometimes feared because many of his readers immediately recognized themselves in his insights, and they were uncomfortable with what they read. Think of him not so much as a traditional philosopher, but kind of like a battlefield psychologist of high society. He saw through the masks that people wear. La Rochefoucauld's maxims weren't born out of isolation. They were actually born out of an environment of intellectual competition that came from the 17th century French salons. When I talk about 17th century French salons, I don't mean a place where I get my hair cut or you can get your nails done. I'm talking about a place to discuss intellectual pursuits. In those days, salons were invite only, usually held in someone's home, usually a aristocrat woman's home, where the invited guests would discuss politics, philosophy, literature, and human nature. And in these environments, whoever could craft the best maxims would win the game. It was a game of who could come up with the clearest, sharpest insights about human nature in the fewest words possible. Maxims had to be brief enough to be delivered in conversation, elegant enough to be memorable, and piercing enough to where everybody in the room would pause and say, "That was uncomfortable." In an era where appearances were everything, the highest display of intelligence was the ability to see through those appearances and to say so in a single sentence. This book is comprised of more than 500 maxims, and although you can read through those 500 maxims fairly quickly, my recommendation, if you were to pick up and read this book, is to spend a moment and pause after every single maxim you read, just so you can digest, understand, and grasp the message that La Rochefoucauld wants to get across. This isn't a book about virtue, it's a book about reality. Many philosophers tell you how people ought to behave, and again, La Rochefoucauld, he was different. He told you how people actually behave. He wasn't prescribing virtue, he was diagnosing the motive. Instead of saying, be generous, La Rochefoucauld asked, are we generous because we want to be generous and because we care, or are we generous because we want to be admired instead? Now, me personally, I think I'm a great guy. I think I'm selfless, I think I'm altruistic, I think I'm generous, all around an awesome person. And then I read this book, and during my reading of this book, I got pretty uncomfortable because I realized that many of my actions and many of most people's actions comes from a desire to self-preserve, self-preservation. At the heart of many of La Rochefoucauld's maxims was the concept of amour propre, a deep, but mostly unconscious desire to protect our image, our status, our sense of importance. We human beings want to appear virtuous. We want to be admirable without appearing that we want to be known as admirable. We often reframe our actions so that we can be perceived as good people. In other words, La Rochefoucauld posits that we are experts at self-deception. And that's why this book has endured over 350 years later. Long before the time of the great minds of Friedrich Nietzsche, Sigmund Freud, and Carl Jung, La Rochefoucauld was exploring hidden motives, ego preservation, and the gap between appearance and reality. This book overall was very insightful. The maxims were very powerful. A lot of them were so short, but so jam-packed with insight and uncomfortable truth about human nature. If I had to score this book, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. I assume with a lot of these French to English books, especially old world French, a lot of things get kind of misphrased or lost in translation. So I understand that part. But overall, if you pick up this book, it is very insightful, very enlightening. And it'll make you uncomfortable at times because I like to think I'm a good person. I think all of us like to think that we're good people. But the uncomfortable realization is that we're also selfish creatures and that sometimes we want to help other people and that desire can be genuine, but we also want to help ourselves and put ourselves in the best positions to succeed. So there's always that dual nature of all of our actions. I want to share 5 maxims from this book that I thought were very powerful that would really give you more color for this book, and hopefully it'll motivate you to pick this book up. First maxim: to listen well and answer to the point is one of the most perfect qualities one can have in conversation. Everybody complains of his memory, but nobody of his judgment. That's a powerful one right there. Third one: the glory of great men must always be measured against the means they have used to acquire it. I'll read it again. The glory of great men must always be measured against the means they have used to acquire it. So important, especially in today's society. Love of fame, fear of disgrace, schemes for advancement, desire to make life comfortable and pleasant, and the urge to humiliate others are often at the root of the valor men hold in such high esteem. This one made me very uncomfortable for obvious reasons. Last one: the weak cannot be sincere. I'll leave it right there. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're interested in more wisdom, follow me on Instagram and on X. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Until next time, all the best. Bye.